Coming up on Volusia Magazine, we get our bodies in shape, our gardens in order, and we have bees. Those stories and more next. Hello and welcome to Volusia Magazine. I'm Amber Osman. Today we follow Sharon Gamble, livestock agent at the University of Florida IFAS Extension in Volusia County, to a local farm to learn about keeping bees.
Hi, I'm Sharon Gamble with Solutions for Your Life, and we're here at S&S Apiaries today with our preeminent beekeeper, Jessie Hazem, in New Smyrna Beach. I work in the area of livestock and dabble over into entomology and other things, and I've always had a great interest in beekeeping myself. And we were just speaking with Jessie, and he was telling me about all the health benefits involved with locally produced honey.
The honey contains all the nectar that come out of all these flowers, and that nectar have pollen in it. And that pollen that if you inhale it in the air, you're allergic to, when you eat it, your body actually starts building immune to it. And that's why honey actually is very good for you. This is a cabbage palm, and it's in bloom. And we have over 5, 6, 7 different varieties of native bees that are actually pollinating the cabbage palm tree, seeking the nectar and the pollen, and they go from one flower to another and they see if they have any nectar inside. I see a yellow jacket, I see a beetle. This is just an example for what a honey flow and how many different varieties of our bees can actually pollinate blooming flower, and it's a source of food for all creatures.
Can you tell me about our local bee population around here and what you do?
The local bee population is actually increasing since I started beekeeping in New Smyrna Beach. I am the largest beekeeper in New Smyrna at the moment. There's other beekeepers around Volusia County, and one of them is bigger, much higher, much bigger than I am. And there's other small ones, and some of them are, run a couple hundred hives, and some of them run like 2 or 3 hives, which is what we call the hobbyists. This is a smoker, and what it does, it basically it alerts the bees that somebody coming into the hive, and that will give us an advantage that they're calm, they know that we're coming, so they're not very aggressive to us.
I have to admit, this is the first time I've held a frame of bees, but I kind of like it.
The queen bee inside a hive is essential. One of the Florida standard is best practice management for beekeepers is to replace queens almost every year. The University of Florida, they recommend to replace queen every 6 months. Personally, I disagree, since the first year of the queen is the best year for her. So I believe 6 months is too short of a window. There's several reasons to replace the queen. One of them is for production. For commercial beekeepers, they replace the queen so they have a fresh, young generation inside, which is a young queen that's willing to lay thousands of eggs during the season, and she's not old and wore out. Over here in Volusia County, we live in what we call subtropical. And what that means is we're neither northerns or southerns. And we have the most diversified different plants in Florida. And what that means to the bees is it's an essential source, a lot of more sources for foraging and for pollination. Anything that blooms, the bees will find before anybody else. And anything that blooms, the bees will work. And there's 2 sources that the bees need from flower. There's some flowers produce pollen, which is essential protein for the hive. And some flowers produce the pollen and the nectar. And the nectar is what we call nectar at the beginning in the flower. Later, the bees will collect the nectar and will turn into honey inside the hive. And there's only 1 to 2% of flowers that produce what we call superous nectar that we can make honey off of. And looking for local honey producers, which is, local beekeeper, is very important. Part of the reason is the ones that you buy in the stores, like in big stores, they process their honey because they don't have a choice. They pack it and they have to process it in order to put it on the shelf in the store.
So if you'd like more information regarding bees and beekeeping or local honey, get in touch with us at the Volusia County Agricultural Center and we'll try to provide you the information you need. We also have an awesome bee club that meets there monthly, and they're just super about helping people get started in the bees and give you some hands-on experience. So with Solutions for Your Life, I'm Sharon Gamble.
Food pantries can be a lifeline for individuals and families. Dr. Holly Smith shows us how the Department of Health is helping local food pantries to connect with resources that can help them help others. And that includes education on spotting healthy and not so healthy foods.
Breakfast. They say it's the most important meal of the day, and participants in the Meet Up and Eat Up workshop at the Department of Health learn how to make sure their breakfast is healthy. The workshop's audience is a bit unique. Attendees work or volunteer in food pantries across Volusia County. The pantries can be a lifeline for families who run out of food or money for food before the end of the month. This workshop offers pantry workers information to help those families make healthy choices when shopping the pantry shelves.
Looking at statistics in the state of Florida, especially the rate of diabetes, we have 13% of adults with diabetes and we have 38% of adults with prediabetes. So that's kind of the catalyst of why we want to put on a workshop like this. We want to make the food pantry a healthy environment for clients, and we also want the staff of the food pantry who works very hard to have tools to keep themselves healthy too.
Some may consider this an out-of-the-box concept. The Department of Health teams with Second Harvest Food Bank and the University of Florida Extension Service to share information on what they have to offer food banks to help the food banks serve those in need and do it in a nutritious way. And that education can start with donations. Typically, you hear food banks are looking for non-perishable food items. Boxes of sugary cereals and processed foods fall into that description. But if you know what you're looking for, you can find more nutritious food in a box or a can. To help pantries get healthy donations to stock their shelves, volunteers are given a list of nutritionally dense foods to request from donors. These are healthy foods that can stay on a shelf at a pantry until it's picked up by someone in need. Even without a list to guide them, workers learn how to spot healthy and not so healthy items.
There's a lot of options on the shelf and there's a lot of processed foods out there. So just a little education towards reading the food labels, knowing what to look for in the ingredient list, and finding the healthier option. It's not always obvious.
New food labels can help shoppers spot the best options. For example, the new nutrition labels show exactly how many added grams of sugar are in a product. The old label did not break out added sugars from natural sugars, and it did not tell you what % of your daily allotment of sugar that portion is. Here's what you should look for.
A good rule of thumb is the 5-20 rule. If it's got 5% or less of a nutrient that you're trying to avoid, like sugar, saturated fat, sodium, you want to look for that 5%. That would be a nice number. You can fit that into your diet. If it's 20% or over, that means it's high in that nutrient or that item. So if it's something bad, like salt, sugar, or fat, you want to look for another product if it's 20% or more.
This is an example of the old nutrition label versus the new nutrition label. And if you look at the sugars on the old label, it doesn't tell you what % these 3 grams are of your total diet, nor does it tell you which ones are added sugar.
On the new label, you can see that it's 10 grams of added sugars. That's 20% of the total daily value, and this product is one you should avoid.
The new labels show you how much you're getting of the bad stuff and even some good stuff like fiber, but sugar is of particular interest.
The research shows that added sugar, it increases obesity, which heart disease, diabetes, insulin resistance. So we're looking to decrease added sugar. When it comes to natural sugar that you see in your fruit and also in milk and yogurt, those are actually very healthy foods, and you don't want to be eliminating that from your diet. The fruit is just the opposite research. It shows that it's got protective value, it decreases the risk of heart disease, it has fiber, so it gives you that feeling of fullness, whereas soda, it actually increases your appetite. So there's a lot of issues with the added sugar in soda versus the fruit that's giving you all that nutritional value.
This is 22 teaspoons of added table sugar. That's the average daily intake in an American diet. Those new food labels are going to help you to understand how much added sugar you're having to get you down to the recommended 12 teaspoons of added sugar per day.
There are healthy ways to flavor food without added sugar. Add plant-based spices like cinnamon, nutmeg, or vanilla instead of sugar. Fruit also is a good choice. And think about swapping out ingredients. Try salsa in your recipe instead of barbecue sauce, which is loaded with, you guessed it, sugar.
Products that only have a single ingredient, like black beans, are going to be a lot healthier than something that has been sweetened, like your baked beans. So it's just baby steps towards getting that sugar out.
If you'd like more information on the new food labels and how they can help you make healthy choices when you're planning your next meal, log on to the Food and Drug Administration's website at fda.gov. That's fda.gov. For the Florida Department of Health in Volusia County, I'm Dr. Holly Smith.
A national running club with a local chapter here in Volusia County is using fitness as a way to connect with area veterans. Community Information Director Joanne Magley has more.
Every year on Veterans Day, people across the country pay tribute to the men and women who have served in the armed forces, as well as those who have fallen defending the country.
Way to go, Chief!
But many people, like Lonnie Faulkner, believe veterans should be honored every day.
Before we start, I'd like to call each branch of the military up so we can share our appreciation and know who you are that we're working out next to.
Lonnie is the chapter captain of Team RWB Daytona. Team RWB is a national veterans organization with over 200 chapters and more than 125,000 members, 2/3 of whom are veterans.
In Team RWB Daytona, we have about 1,200 members with over 800 veterans. And our mission is to enrich our veterans' lives by connecting them to their community through physical and social activities.
One of those social activities included a visit to Emory L. Bennett Veterans Nursing Home in Daytona Beach.
So our volunteers from Team RWB sits down individually, face to face, talking to our veterans, asking them what they want for Christmas. And then from that time to the Christmas party, we go shopping, we wrap the gifts, and then there's a big Christmas party, and we give them their Christmas gifts. And it is amazing and heartwarming and so satisfying to be a part of that.
On Veterans Day, Team RWB Daytona teamed up with CrossFit Port Orange for a special workout fundraiser called WOD for Warriors that celebrates our veterans and was open to all individuals at all fitness levels. It also included a running element. This is Team RWB Daytona's virtual leg of the Old Glory Relay, which started in Seattle on 9/11, ran across the country, and ended in Tampa on Veterans Day. Mark Meese is a veteran who served in the Marines in Afghanistan. He's also the athletic director for Team RWB Daytona.
To be part of this organization, especially as athletic director, the importance of being able to connect with other veterans and other people out in the community, to be able to hear their experiences, to be able to help them. A lot of them want to get out, but usually don't have the motivation or, are too shy or too anxious to get out. So RWB is basically like a helping hand to get veterans and other parts of our community together.
Others, like Vince Faulkner, a Navy veteran, says Team RWB makes veterans feel like they belong.
Team RWB is probably, of all of the veteran service organizations that I've been aware of or been a part of, Team RWB does something very unique in as much as they want to bring our veterans and our community together again, to make each other understand the other group. There's nothing like this anywhere else. For myself and a lot of other veterans that have been searching, looking for some place where they feel like they fit in and where they belong so that they can share their experiences with other veterans, this is priceless.
To learn how you can connect with Team RWB, visit teamrwb.org or like the group on Facebook. For Volusia Magazine, I'm Joanne Magley.
They said I couldn't dream. Called me a piece of trash and swore that's all I'd ever be. Said a bottle couldn't see the ocean. Give up. Go back to the dumpster. But I didn't listen. I made my way. And now, I am what I've always wanted to be.
Sinkholes are a common natural occurrence in Florida. UF-IFAS Extension Director Dennis Mudge has details on these unpredictable homeowner headaches.
Welcome to Solutions for Your Life. I'm Dennis Mudge. You know, Irma, the hurricane that happened recently, probably makes you think a little bit about sinkholes. You know, at our office we get a lot of calls on sinkholes regularly. People very concerned, do I have a sinkhole in my yard? Well, you're looking at here an old sinkhole, so old that it's got trees growing in it. But this is what a sinkhole can look like when it's large. Sinkholes happen in a lot of different ways, and sometimes they can happen in your yard. But you know what? 99% of the calls I get are not sinkholes. They're actually caused by other things. So let's think a little bit about these other types of things that could be causing you to think you have a sinkhole in your yard. The types of things that you would have is erosion in your property. Maybe it's coming from your gutters. Maybe you don't have gutters or they're improperly put up. But that erosion can look like a sinkhole and not be one. It can even crack your blocks of your house and not be a sinkhole. We also have problems where the water comes in from your public utilities. If it leaks at all, it creates a hole that looks like a sinkhole, and it's not. Maybe where the water comes out from your septic to your septic tank, and there's a crack there, or to the public septic system. Still, if there's a leak at all, it looks like a sinkhole. I visit these places and often see homes like yours where you have a small hole and it's not a sinkhole. So first thing to think is if you think you have one, you probably do not. Don't be alarmed, but have it checked out. And then what we can do is find out if you've got a sinkhole. And then if you really have one, then you get a hold of your insurance company. You start to work towards filling the real sinkhole. But please believe me, most holes in your yard are not a sinkhole. So let's talk for a moment about real sinkholes. A real sinkhole that happens might be a lake that disappears. It actually goes down into the ground and you've got a sinkhole. Or if you're talking about an ancient sinkhole or a hole that's older like this one, you might find water in the bottom because it's all done sinking and now there are trees growing in it. And it can still be what was once an active sinkhole. Sinkholes don't always sink forever. We're not going to the core of the earth. We're not looking at quicksand. This is simply a typical sinkhole that you might see. So if you still think you might have a sinkhole, give us a call. With Solutions for Your Life, Dennis Mudge with the Extension Service for Volusia County.
Rabies is an old disease and will always be present here in Volusia County. Dr. Holly Smith has details on how to protect you and your family.
One thing that is unique about rabies is that it is 100% fatal, but also 100% preventable if after an exposure occurs, the person is given the rabies post-exposure prophylaxis.
Post-exposure prophylaxis, well, that's a big word for treatment. You can avoid that big word if you avoid exposure to rabies in the first place. Rabies is an old disease that affects all mammals. That includes humans and their dogs and cats. Both humans and those pets can get rabies from the bite of an infected animal.
Typically, we average about 3 positive rabies cases a year, but we have not had any since March of 2016.
Positive rabies cases among humans and their pets are not common in Volusia County. It's not that it's not here. Rabies is found in wildlife across the state, and unfortunately, it is here to stay. But people can protect themselves and their pets if they understand the disease. Here in Volusia County, rabies is most often found in raccoons and feral cats. Statewide, the disease is most often found in raccoons, bats, and feral cats, in that order. Here's how rabies gets from the raccoon, the bat, or the cat to a human or another animal.
Typically, it's a bite wound. With scratches, there is a theoretical risk because for animals like cats and raccoons that do frequent grooming of their paws, if the saliva is still wet when you get scratched and it causes an open wound, then you could potentially be exposed to that. So we do look at scratches from cats and raccoons as potential exposure, not so much dogs.
Bites are by far the most common way rabies is spread. For full disclosure, though, you also can get rabies if you're exposed to the nervous tissue like the brain or nerves of the animal. In Florida, humans have been doing a pretty good job of steering clear of the virus. There had not been a locally acquired case of rabies in a human since the 1940s in Florida until recently.
There were 2 recent cases of rabies in humans in the state of Florida that were acquired here, both due to bad exposures for which the person did not seek medical attention. One of these was in Lake County, one of these was in Highlands County.
Again, both cases of human rabies were caused by bats. Bat bites are so tiny that a person may not even know they were bitten. The bite can be so small that someone would not feel the need to seek medical attention like you would for a dog or a cat bite. But you can get infected by those small bat bites even more easily than from larger animal bites, and it doesn't take much exposure to get rabies. If you have a bat house in your backyard to eat mosquitoes, that does not mean you're going to get exposed to rabies, as long as you keep your distance from the bats and their bite.
We definitely do not recommend trying to capture bats or playing with bats or doing anything with them. If you see an injured bat, call wildlife to go ahead and take care of it.
Raccoons, bats, and feral cats can have rabies for several days and infect you or your pet before they start to show symptoms. But once the virus reaches the animal's brain, you will notice a change.
Wild animals would probably, their behavior would be different, bizarre, unusual, out of character for the animal. For things like raccoons, it's hard to say. It used to be said that if a raccoon is out during the day, he's probably rabid, but because raccoons have gotten so acclimated to people, being out during the day is not a sign for that anymore. But certainly if they're staggering, having seizures, or acting extremely aggressive.
Other diseases can cause similar neurological symptoms, but just because an animal is acting oddly does not mean it has rabies. For example, canine distemper can look a lot like rabies. Animals spread these viruses for several days or longer before they start to show symptoms. And in the meantime, they can look cute and healthy. Here's some advice for pet owners.
Get your dogs vaccinated for rabies and distemper. Cats, make sure they're vaccinated for rabies.
Finally, you never want to wait to seek medical treatment if you think you might have been exposed. Once you or your pet starts to show symptoms, the disease is nearly always fatal. Prevention and quick action are key.
If anybody thinks they could have been exposed through a bite or a bat in their room that they had contact with, then they do need to go see a healthcare provider to get started on prophylaxis. If the animal is available for testing, we can test the animal through our state lab and find out if it was rabid or not. And that's certainly the ideal situation, because then if you don't have to start the prophylaxis, we don't want to give it to you.
If you'd like more information on rabies or rabies prevention, you can find that on the website for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. That address is cdc.gov/rabies. For the Florida Department of Health right here in Volusia County, I'm Dr. Holly Smith.
We head out to the garden with Joe Sewards, urban horticulture specialist with the Volusia County Extension. Joe gets his hands dirty and digs deep into what it takes to grow your own community garden.
Hi, I'm Joe Sewards, and welcome to Solutions for Your Life. In the last episode, we talked about creating a community garden in general. Now I'd like to talk about some of the specifics of creating a community garden. There's a lot to remember, and probably more than I'll be able to cover in this segment, but I do want to go over some of the high points. Whenever you're thinking about creating a community garden, first of all, you got to make sure you have space. How many beds do you want to have in your community garden, just to start with? It's easy to dream big and say you want hundreds of beds, but that's not a good idea. You want to start small, and if it takes off and it's popular, you can always add more. But if you make it too big to begin with, it's hard to take it back. The second thing you need to remember is that you need sunlight. Full sun, all day long. You can have shady parts of the garden, and you can grow certain vegetables in shadier parts of the garden, but remember, the equation is very simple. If you have more sun, you'll have more productivity. The third thing is you're going to need a source of water. Is there a source nearby? Are you going to have to ask permission from the property owner? Are you going to have to ask permission from the city or the county or whatever municipality in which the community garden is going to be located? These are the basics of community gardening. Also, when you're creating a community garden, are you going to require insurance? Who's going to be in charge of the community garden? These are things you need to take consideration of, because community gardens don't manage themselves, they don't maintain themselves. So who is going to be interested? Who is going to maintain it? Who's going to take the money for membership? You have to charge membership. If you don't charge membership, then people will have no value in the garden that they are trying to maintain. And if it didn't cost them anything, they're not invested in it. So you have to charge a monthly, a semi-yearly, a yearly rate, whatever you decide. But those funds can be used to put right back into the garden to help replenish soils, buy tools, pay the water bill if there is one. So there's a lot that goes into creating and maintaining a community garden. And if you need more information on how to do that, you can contact us at the University of Florida Extension here in Volusia County. Our phone number is area code 386-822-5778. And our email is, you can email me directly at sewards@ufl.edu. That's my last name, sewards@ufl.edu. With Solutions for Your Life, I'm Joe Sewards.
This concludes this special episode. Thank you for watching Volusia Magazine. If you have any questions about the show, you can feel free to give us a call at any of the numbers you see listed here, or you can log on to volusia.org and click on the News tab at the top of the screen to find us. And we hope you won't forget to listen to Volusia Today. That's Volusia County Government's weekly public radio broadcast. Volusia Today airs every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Sunday mornings on the local radio stations you see on your screen. For Volusia Magazine, I'm Amber Osmond, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.